And you can't have what you want in life by being what rejects it.
Yep.
And if you're scared, nervous, judgmental, afraid to get hurt, you're going to bring in that.
Yep.
The spiritual chiropractor.
My friends call me the real life care bear.
Talk it out.
Welcome back.
Welcome to Black Sheep Thinking's podcast number 8.
Yeah.
We are discussing
romantic relationships.
Our romantic relationship. I am Morgan Pierce.
And I'm Andrew Podvang.
And we are two best friends and life coaches to discuss the difference between our thinking, what we are not, and the truth of who we are, and innate intelligence that helps us have the life we want.
Yeah.
I love how I say it different every time.
It is. It's true. There's so many ways you can say it.
Variations, I guess. Yeah. A relationship with what we do.
Yeah.
And so of relationships, we've had relationships.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is like we can talk from experience.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you what not to do.
Yeah, me too. But you can also tell us what to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the cool part about it. I mean, we can only talk from our experience, but I think the most valuable experience for me, as you usually let me kick it off, is that I'm going to be together with my wife for almost 14 years currently, but I was in a relationship for 14 years prior to that.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know I had a high school sweetheart it just didn't work out with, and you know, it was really hard at that time for me because I was really hard on myself. I think I was hard on her because I thought she didn't. It was so easy in my mind for her, just like, why can't you just love me this way? And I thought, I think she felt the same way. And like I always say, I was like, I was rock and roll and she was country.
Yep.
It's probably why I don't like country music.
Yeah.
But truthfully, like, it was really hard. We were both growing up and growing different, and we had a lot of expectations of each other, and we were still trying to figure out who we were. And yeah, it was challenging. It was I was still dealing with some of the problems of growing up in a tough environment with a family that was super dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Hope my mom's not listening. You were great, Mom.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like all families are dysfunctional in their own way, right? There's no...
I don't know. I came in with yours a lot, man. I mean, you guys are pretty much adopted.
we've had our fair share of dysfunction.
Yeah.
But yeah, one thing you touched on there was how hard you were on yourself and the way that showed up in your relationship. Yeah. And I think that's a problem for a lot of people, right? Is they have that expectation of like, I'm so hard on me, you need to be easy on me now. You need to be the one that's easy on me because I'm so hard on myself.
Right. Or they go to someone, like the concept of you complete me.
Yeah.
It's like, I think a lot of people and look for a relationship to help. They either date someone that's like them and it drives them crazy, or they date someone that's the exact opposite and it drives them crazy.
Yeah, and that old adage of like opposites attract, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, for me, I think the biggest learning lesson is I got past that relationship, and it's just understanding that we were both doing our very best. We just weren't right for each other.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have a hard time in romantic relationships recognizing that, I can look back now and realize that she wasn't a bad person. I never thought she was a bad person, but I just thought she was bad to me.
Yeah.
And when I realized now she wasn't bad to me, she just didn't know she didn't know how to love herself, nor did I. Mm-hmm. And I don't think and she wasn't trying to mess with me. She just wasn't the person that was the right connect for me.
Yeah.
The right fit.
Yeah.
And so that's always tough because we think, it's like I thought I wasn't worthy of it. And so she wasn't giving it to me because she was just like not trying or didn't want to, or she didn't love me enough. I think she loved me as best she could. And, I know she's doing well, and I'm really happy for that. And I moved on too, and I'm really happy too. But it's funny how you take yourself with you, because those things kind of can reoccur. People think, if I change the relationship, everything's going to work out. Yeah. It's like, well, not if you haven't figured things out about yourself.
Yep.
And that's why, you've always said about the percentages of relationships. What is it again?
It's like 70%. I think it's even higher now. But 70%.
Of breakup, yeah. But relationships aren't...
They're not 50-50. They're 100-100.
Right, you both have to be whole.
Yeah, it's two people openly willing to commit to put 100% effort into their own side and own their own side of the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one thing we help people understand is like, I realize now, and I, as you know, like halfway through my current 14 years, around year 7, things started to get messy in my relationship, and it was really about me not loving myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, here I am again, repeating, I'm not getting the love I need. And then I saw Gary John Bishop talk No, not Gary John Bishop. It was the same conference he was at. It was John Gray.
Oh yeah.
I remember, writing, found John Gray, pop psychologist. I'm like, great. What is he going to say? But he said a number of things that really are meaningful. The first thing he said, and I remember, pardon me, I remember him saying, like, first thing he said, every time you tell your partner they're not loving you right, you're saying you don't love yourself enough. And that was like my first note of the conference. I was like, okay, that's it. That's
Looks
all
like we got what we needed.
I got my money's worth, But he also talked about, like, to exaggerate your love for your partner.
Yeah.
And how he would kiss his wife and leave and come back in the room and kiss his wife goodbye and then go into the car, start it, and then come back and kiss his wife goodbye till it was almost ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, his wife died of cancer that year, and how much he missed her and loved her. And I just witnessing a man who just loved his wife so much, and I knew that was inside me.
Yeah.
Why wasn't it connecting the way I wanted? And then so through the work, I realized it was because, I didn't think I was enough.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I was lovable and as I started to heal from that and grow through it, I realized, relationships are not a place to go to take. They're always a place to go to give.
Yeah.
And if you're in a relationship and you're needing something, then it's very unhealthy, I find.
Yeah, it can be. I know very much the same for me. Like, when my marriage ended, the same idea. I felt very unworthy and like I wasn't worthy of that relationship. But I never really understood how to be that love for myself. And so I kept looking for it on the outside. And I was never, like you say about the way he would, kiss his wife goodbye and then come back in and like be overly romantic and have those romantic gestures. I was always afraid to really go that far because it was like, what am I getting in return?
Yeah, the scorekeeping concept.
I was always worried about what I was getting in return, and it's like I didn't want to put that much out if I wasn't going to be getting it back.
Oh, you brought up a really interesting concept because I hear that a lot where people are like, I give so much and I get, and I kind of see that in relationships sometimes where someone gives and then someone withdraws and then that person feels, and then they withdraw and that person starts giving.
It's like a power struggle.
Or they're both not giving and it's only working when they're giving. So it is like a power struggle, and it's interesting because if the only time it works is when you're both giving.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned it's the cherry on top to give to your partner, but when you give without expectations, and you give to yourself, when you start to become whole and be like, and so like just recently I had a conversation with my wife and I remember walking down, and this might have caused a fight before, but it didn't. She was really, I was like, I don't need you, right? She's like, I know you're a very strong, independent man. And I was like, not so much, but working on it. But we laughed because it wasn't like a need thing. It's like, I'm choosing you. I love that Annie song that you introduced me to.
I choose you.
It's just such a great look at like, out of all the relationships you have in your life, all your family, your kids, your partner's the one you choose, and there's like it's a reflection too, not of who you are, but there's something obviously in them that shows.
There's
who
a
you
choice.
are.
There's a reason you made that choice to be with that person. Actually, you said that to me. That really shifted things for me and my ex-wife. Was like after an argument, you said, you didn't accidentally marry this woman and have 4 kids with her, right? Like you chose to at one point. What was it that made you choose this woman?
Right.
And then I realized, I was, I still had these expectations on what she needed to be in order for us to be okay. And as soon as I stopped having those, and I just accepted her for where she was at, because that's what love really is, right? Is acceptance. And so I can honestly say I truly love her because I accept her exactly as she is now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think a lot of people, if they accepted themselves a lot more, they would accept themselves. And you brought up something interesting. In the concept of like, when you started to see your partner, you have to forgive yourself. A lot of people think, oh, my partner hurt me. And it goes back to that. It's like, can you, if they split up, this is kind of likely it doesn't work. If they split up, they're like, oh, they're so mean. It's like, well, then, they might not be perfect, but just take a second. You chose them, so forgive yourself for making that choice. Yeah, because it might not have been a healthy person.
Yeah, how much we judge ourselves for picking the wrong person.
Well, it's the blame game. Like, it goes back to, first you blame yourself and then you blame them, or other way around. You blame them, then you blame yourself. But there's no blame required. I mean, that relationship was meaningful at the time, and as you grow, and you start to realize, oh, maybe I'm not in this for the right reasons, or they weren't in it for the right reasons. Relationships can be complicated for people when they're still trying to figure themselves out and they're living an identity.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to a client today who went through a divorce, and for 5 years she fought and struggled and tried and lived in this like belief that to heal their relationship, they had to get back together. Like he would see her finally clearly, and he would come running back, and it would heal everything, and they would be back together. And as she, we're nearing the end of our time together, and she's like, I realize now I love him, and I want the best for him, and that doesn't mean we have to be together.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's real love. Like, it's just understanding you can care for somebody, and even if it doesn't work out, that it's okay. It doesn't mean anything about you.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest lesson from my high school sweetheart, is like, I wasn't the best version of myself back then, but understanding, like, I was just reacting to the fact that I wasn't loving myself, and I thought I had to, like, take it. Like, why am I not getting love?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She's not loving me the way I want. Are you loving yourself the way you want? No.
Yeah.
And then
yeah. Well, it really comes down to that, right? If you want to get love, you got to give love.
Yeah. Well, I was giving it, but I was giving it with expectations.
With expectations. Yeah.
And that leads us into like that. Well, a lot of people are like, well, they make me feel this way. It's like, yeah. They control your emotions. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
that make me feel codependent statement. Yeah.
Yeah. Codependency plays a large part in relationships because people really think that it is an important relationship. It's the closest one you'll have.
Yep.
But when people start to blame each other for the way they feel, they're not taking responsibility for themselves.
Yep.
I always love that line out of The Expendables. I can't remember who said it, but it was like, and it goes for both genders, but it's like, I find the men that get along best with women are the ones that can get along without them. And I'm like, oh man, like the people that can get along without a relationship is the ones that get along, because then you're adding to the relationship.
Yep.
But there's relationships can be, no matter how good, because my marriage is incredible now, as is your relationships, and someone say, do you ever fight with your wife? I'm like, we've downgraded to a bicker at best.
Yeah. It's like we have a disagreement, and then we work through it, and we understand.
And there's humor in it. And like, I'm very lucky. I'm madly in love with my wife, and I always have been. I think that's one of the reasons why I force change on myself, because love can make you do crazy things, but love can make you step up and recognize that there's an opportunity for you to grow too.
Yeah.
And I think great relationships, including non-romantic ones like friendships, can make you see yourself without, being like, oh, I'm not enough. It's like, no, it's like the quote from, how we kind of see clients sometimes. It's like, if I treat you as you are, I'll make you worse.
Yeah.
But if I treat you as I see you want to become, I can help you become that.
Yep.
And so, someone who really loves you unattached from, expectations or, trying to change you because they need to be happy, they can really help you grow to who you want to be. And I credit my wife for helping me become a better man, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I would say I love about the relationship I'm in now. As you know, she's on the road a lot this time of year.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so we rarely see each other.
Yeah.
And so it's like...
The secret to a happy relationship.
Yeah. But in the past... I look at in the past, if I'd been in a relationship like that, I wouldn't have survived it.
Right.
I wouldn't have survived it because I was so needy, and I needed that person to be in my life so much that I would have started looking elsewhere.
Right.
In that time where, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I was searching so much for connection, but I wasn't creating the connection. I wasn't becoming the connection and creating and learning how to create that.
That's actually really interesting for people listening, is like, because people often yearn for connection with their partner.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what it was for me, the way that it showed up for me was I wanted it so desperately, but I wanted the other side to create it. And when it didn't happen the way I wanted it to, I would start to look outside of the relationship. And,
right.
And that was,
somebody will give me what I'm looking for.
So I'll find somebody eventually that will give me what I'm looking for. And when I realized that I didn't need somebody to give me that I could create that connection with myself. And then when I connected with me and the truth of who I am, and I really learned how to love myself, I realized I could become connection, and I could create that in my relationship.
Yeah, it's beautiful, because, and that goes for a lot more than just connection. Like, if people take that and extrapolate it, if they're missing something, become connection. We worked with that guy in our group that was upset because he left a relationship. He knew it wasn't the right thing, but it was over Valentine's Day, and he felt really lonely. Yeah. You remember that? We're like, he's like, and he called and he was like, I don't know how to deal with this. Like, I know that I'm not in a relationship, but I just feel alone. And I'm like, well, alone's the problem, but what's the solution? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, what do you want to feel? He's like, connection. So we encouraged him to cut out little Valentine's Day hearts and write nice things to strangers, and go and hold a door open at like a grocery store or Walmart and just hand it to people that seem like they're alone or just the right people he felt a vibe with. And he's like, okay. And so he called the next day.
Yeah, and it shifted him.
Completely. He
Totally
was like,
shifted
I'm like,
him.
what was the experience? He's like, connection.
Connection.
I was like, so you became connection and you experienced it. What was it like for them? And he was like, people were smiling and laughing. And I was like, that's great. Yeah. You know, just this innocent young guy handing out love letters to people on Valentine's Day to a stranger.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because, you know, we have two choices to make in that situation. Sit around and feel sorry for ourselves that we don't have what we want, or go out and create it.
Yeah, for sure. And so many people are just so frustrated that their partner isn't helping them become that. And I don't think it's your responsibility, because, you know, in the concept of like, we're all dealing with stuff, it's not your responsibility to fix someone else, but it is an opportunity to meet your partner where they're at and say, I'll work on this with you. And I think that's where connection can really occur.
Yep.
I think, you know, like many of my role models are female, and they have this great gift of nurturing. And for an abandoned boy that was, you know, left by his dad and unloved by his stepfather, those kind of things can, you know, sometimes leave doubts and wounds early on. And before I had this understanding, of course, but a lot of women came into my life and nurtured me to understand the kind of boy and the man I could grow to be. And so I'm just been very thankful for that.
Yeah, likewise.
And so I think I hit my microphone, no big deal. And so one of the things I really I'm not a big fan of strategies. Yeah, I'm not a big fan, but they can't even pronounce it. That's how little I'm a fan. But one that I really like, there's a couple things that popped up that I really love for romantic relationships. The first thing that I always done is, the 5 love languages to me never resonated. Yeah. But one thing I do think those are the 5 ways we can show love. But I don't think it's just romantic relationships. We show each other the 5 love languages. Absolutely. I can show it to a stranger. I show it to my clients. Yeah. I even went through it one time. I was like, since you've been here, have I done this? But I mean, if you look at them, we write them down. Sometimes Nicole and I are like feeling disconnected just because we're not sure why. Yeah. We'll write down the 5 love languages and be like, okay, you know, gifts, they don't have to be monetary. It could be just something small or a poem or whatever. Physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, and acts of service. Yep. And we'll go through and click off those and say, like, are we doing this? And just like maybe once a month, or if we just feel that every so often. And, you know, of course, you know which one we usually have an X on.
Quality time.
Pardon me, quality time, because I mean, my wife works and so do I, and we have a kid that never wants to leave me alone even when I'm in the bathroom. So it's like, you know, one of those things where, and so we make a focused effort to make sure we have quality time. Yeah. And I just love using it more, and because I never liked it. It was like, oh, there's a primary language. I'm like, who cares? Yeah.
What I dislike about that idea of like, this is my primary love language and my secondary or whatever, is it's like, now you place this expectation on your partner. Well, you have to love me in this way, and if you don't do it this way, then you're not showing me love.
Right. Or I'm giving it to you this way and you're not receiving it, but that's what it is. Yeah. I'm like, what if you figured out, what if you gave all 5? You're going to hit it. Yeah. It's like teaching styles. We don't just teach one way. You want to teach in all different ways. So if people are different types of learners, well, people are different, receive love differently potentially. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I always let people say, well, what if I keep asking them to do something for me and they're not? I'm like, are they trying? Yeah. Then that's what it is. Yeah. It's not perfection. It's you know, effort and dedication. Yeah. Another one I loved is a while back when we went for, I think it was Valentine's Day, where we spent like that quality time thing going to Picton. Oh, yeah. I was asking Nicole, I'm like, what do you want to talk about, work? I'm like, no, we're talking about it all the time. We're talking about it all the time. And so she said, what do you want to talk about? I said, well, what's going on with you? And she read a book, and it was a Gary John Bishop book called Love Uneffed. Yeah. And I was like, how was it? She was like, nothing surprising to you. But there was one thing, and I really love it. It brought up what do you think our 3 aligned values are? Mm-hmm. I thought that was a cool exercise, because I was like, because aligned values, I think, are the most important thing, because in a relationship, there's the 3 pillars of like, love, and lust. Yeah. And you and I both agree, like I just said earlier, like I love you. I mean, I pretty much love all people. Yeah. I don't think there's many people I don't think there's people I don't love. I might not like them. Yep. And that's where relationships suffer. That's usually where they suffer. Right. Where the most, where the respect, where the familiarity with the aligned values, where we enjoy hobbies together. That's where I think a lot of relationships suffer. And then, of course, the lust department can go from there. But I've seen relationships that like love and lust are really powerful, but if they don't like each other. Yeah. So I think that's like the leg of the 3-legged table that suffers the most. And then knowing what your aligned values are that's a great way. I wish more couples had conversations before they got in a relationship of like what's important to them that way.
Yeah.
Like not with the, because like, oh, you like hockey, I like hockey. Oh, you like stuff, I like things. Like they have that conversation, but it's like, I've seen relationships get, go south because someone was very charitable and someone believed in being conservative and not giving your money away. The charity started at home, and then that can cause a rift. And so those values need to be discussed, not judged, but if you can accept them, but if they're aligned. And that's where a lot of people come to us and say, now ever since we've had this understanding with you, or they'll refer their partners to us, because the understanding becomes that value where they're like, we know what we are, and
there's a foundational piece to it.
Yeah, and when someone's reacting and they're in their thinking, they don't start. There's not an argument. They just start having a different discussion.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I love about it too. Like I say, it's a foundational piece, and it's not something that's like wielded like a sword. Because sometimes I find like strategies, psychology strategies, I'll see people do that in the relationships where they'll like wield the words as a sword and like use them as like a way to manipulate and make the other person look. That's a tough one. Yeah.
So I mean, healthy relationships really come down to becoming the only relationship that matters is the one you have with yourself. And we might have said that before in a previous podcast, but if you have a healthy relationship with yourself, you know your worth, and I don't mean like, oh, how much, how valuable I am, not like Beyonce, like I can have another you in a second, but that you just know that you're.
Which is the challenge, because sometimes when you say that to people, they're like, oh, so I need to leave my relationship so I can learn to love myself.
No.
And you're living proof of that you don't have to. You can do that within a relationship if both parties are willing to allow that to occur.
Exactly. And growth, you can grow together or grow apart. The difference is really going to be, again, aligned values and having open conversations and not projecting your insecurities on somebody else over and over again. You have to own. We're all wounded in some way from our youth. I don't like that meme. Why is the first half of your life, why is the second half of your life about overcoming the first half of your life? But I mean, when you really look at it, it's like if you are responsible for your wounds and to not project them. And so many people are, I find so many times when I work with somebody, even if I never meet their partner, when they start to do when they get into this understanding and they start to know how to be who they are and the difference between their thinking and how to sell it, all of a sudden a number of things happen. When their partner realizes like, wow, I just got a much happier partner. And then just by default, because that person, they start shifting with them. I mean, it's very much like, it's a lot easier to be with someone who, one of you has to lead by example. And too many times in arguments, romantic ones, it's like, well, they need to change. Well, they have to change. I'm like, what if, and that was kind of the thing in my relationship.
Someone's got to be the first one to take that step.
And because my wife held me accountable to being the man I wanted to be, I decided to move all my crap off the table. Because a lot of times it's intermingled and you can't, and finger pointing her, like, well, that's this and this. And it's like, I always say if we all wedged our fingers together, it's like, just cut off their fingers. Well, how do you know? It's tough. And so instead of cutting off fingers, get theirs out of there, untangle them. And then clear up your stuff. And then what's left over on the table isn't about judgment, but it'll allow them to go, oh, wow, like there's still stuff.
There's still stuff.
And now I get to remove it without judgment. Because the best way to get your partner to change is to make them feel they don't need to. Acceptance is a major component. They don't need to grow or change. You grow and set the bar, and they'll want to keep up with you. And if they don't, well then, call us. We'll connect you with somebody who's a better person than we've worked with. Just joking. If someone loves you, they want to run with you. One of the hardest things is, as I started to grow, is that, then what happens, it happened for you too. It's like our partner's going to self-judgment, like, wow, I can't keep up now. And it's like, that's not true. There's no
keeping up. There's no target. It's just knowing what you are in the moment.
And are you happy?
And are you happy? And are you able to create that for yourself?
Right, because as soon as you're independent that way, it's weird how to be in a happy relationship is like you just have to be happy on your own.
You have to be okay. You have to be okay with whether or not it lasts or not. It's so true. It's like that, like Evan taught us, right? Like the best way to survive a fight with 5 men is to accept your death. Accept the worst case scenario,
Yeah. I don't want to end on that. Let's talk about that sounds very. I have to die.
Well, I mean,
you have to accept that life.
We've talked a lot about like how we make it work, But like, what are the situations where it's like, okay, it's okay for you to decide to walk away?
Well, I think when we do the 5 love languages thing, if you are scoring on it and they're not, that's an indicator they don't love you.
Yeah.
I think that if your values are not aligned and there's no compromise, but I think it's not about, because people want to stay in relationships because they really love somebody, but I think there's a part of like, what do you want your experience to be with your partner? And if they're not showing up and trying, then you realize like, you have to decide how long you want to stay there. But if you decide to leave, you don't have to leave by being like, you didn't do it. And I've grown now to understand that in leaving, you don't have to be angry. You just have to accept.
Well, we've watched people do that with physically abusive relationships.
Yes.
Where they've made that choice to choose themselves and put themselves first and leave without anger. In a situation where a lot of people would leave in that way because that is a serious situation where if you're not safe, it can be easily become like, look at what they did to me, look how much they hurt me, look at all the things that they did. But then understand when they come to the understanding that person's just a hurt person.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think when a lot of people leave, if that person's happy, they're like, why weren't they happy with me? And then they start to reflect on it. There's lots of reasons why we can blame relationships, but as you start to realize, I think there's a belief I had when I was young that like, if I just worked really, really hard, the relationship should work. I love them. Why isn't this working? Yeah, because people aren't often the right fit. Mm-hmm. You want it to be, but then what are you really asking a partner to do? If you can't accept your partner exactly as they are, and I don't mean like, there's always growth opportunities in life and becoming a better parent or it's not major shifts. But if you want someone to completely change who they are at their core, their values, you don't want that person.
No.
You want another person.
And that was the situation with my ex-wife. Like I when we first got together, I was a train wreck and I got worse for a large part of it. And then I started to get really better. I sobered up. I started to clean myself up. I started to put real effort into my business. I started to actually create stuff for myself. And I was like, I'm becoming a better version of myself. And when the relationship didn't work, I was like, very much that. Like, how can I'll never be enough. I'm never going to be enough. I'm never going to be enough. And then I realized I'm not going to ever be enough. It's not about being enough. Yeah. It's about, it just wasn't the right fit.
Yeah, I used to lose myself in relationships. I think there's pictures floating around where I had my hair curly and blonde.
I pierced my cartilage in high school for a girl. I still have a lump here because I pierced my cartilage and it got ripped.
Do for girls. Yeah. If you like me, I'll shave my head. Drive a better car. Yeah. It's like guys don't like cars. Girls like cars, and because of that, guys like cars. All that stuff aside, it's true. We get lost in trying to please our partner because we just look on the outside for them to validate and be like, am I worthy?
Yeah.
And the moment I recognized that, I didn't need to be in a relationship, and that puts a lot of pressure on the other side.
Yeah,
because not only are you expecting validation, but when you're wounded, you're either blaming them or asking them to fix you, like if they're your live-in therapist. And I think the whole thing we're trying to get to in romantic relationships is if you're getting into a romantic relationship, make sure that you are complete and knowing the difference between your thinking and stories you've had. I've seen people sabotage relationships because they believe past relationships reflect their current one, and they use stuff like, they keep secrets on their phone, and then the next person does, and they break in and they ruin a surprise party, and then now that person's like, you don't trust me, and it causes issues. It's one thing to have discernment in your relationship and trust. It's another thing to start to look at your past and bring that into a relationship. It asks that you do the work to let go of all that stuff and find the difference between who you think you are and your thinking and the stories you carry, and to come in full of what you really are, love. And I'm telling you, I meet people all the time, they're like, I'm never going to find the right partner. And I was like, you will if you become, because when you start to become that, you draw in. You can't have what you want in life by being what rejects it.
Yeah.
And if you're scared, nervous, judgmental, afraid to get hurt, you're going to bring in that. Yeah. And you're going to push away the right person. But when you become the truth of who you are, they see it in you and they experience that energy. And I've met people like, I'm never going to get married. And then they work with us. And then 6 months later, they're like, and we get an invitation to their wedding. I thought you said you were never going to meet anybody. Yeah. And they're so happy. And I've seen that a number of times. And I just think and you know it. I can see in them when I meet them, I'm like, you're going to easily get married.
Of course. And to that same effect, if you're in a relationship that currently isn't working or is struggling, do the work on yourself. Realize that it's about you understanding you and loving yourself more, and be okay with that relationship ending if it needs to. Don't force it away. Don't force it to happen. Become the best version of yourself and love yourself properly, and allow that person to show up differently if they're open to it.
Yeah, we'll throw a pitch in right now, because you actually have an online Zoom program that focuses on relationships.
Yes, yeah.
And so check that on our website at blacksheepthinking.ca if you want to take a look and see if it's the right thing for you. But
Absolutely.
so far, everyone who's taken has loved it, and I think it's brilliant content. So I think that's it for today, though.
Yep.
After that, a little pitch of how they can get more support.
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. I hope you enjoyed the content. We love to hear from you. If you have any questions, or if you have anything personal you want to write, because we didn't cover something about romantic relationships and you have a question or you need a more specific answer, please reach out to us.
Yeah, please. Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you.
And so we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and don't forget to like and subscribe and follow.